Let's talk about the Fort Lauderdale condo market and why it's a buyer's market. Today I'm going to give you a breakdown of the statistics driving the condo and townhome market in Fort Lauderdale. So we're going to go through all the key metrics today. We're going to go through things like, at what prices are condos and townhomes actually selling at? How long is it taking to sell them? And my favorite, how much inventory do we have? We're even going to talk about a surprise statistic: inventory's dropping. So if you're a buyer asking, is this a good time to buy? Or if you're a seller asking, how low do I have to price this thing to get it sold? You've come to the right place. Fort Lauderdale, let me tell you, it's good to be back. I got a lot of phone calls, text messages, and emails asking when I was going to do my next market update. So here we go. Let's get into it. Median sold price, $525,000. For those of you that have been listening for a long time, do we even pay attention to median sold prices? No. A couple of reasons why for those of you that don't know me. First, our sample size is too small. There's only 112 sales last month. You can't glean anything from this. Plus, we don't have just kind of a centralized market with prices that are relatively stable. We have penthouse units that are on the ocean front, and then we have low-rise condos that are inland. You just can't glean enough information from using median pricing on this small of a sample size. So normally I would say just look at it and say, hey, we're up and to the right over a period of time. Prices have risen over the last 5 years. That's where it ends. That's the only thing I would take from this. So that's what I got for median prices. All right, total number of properties sold, 112. Look, we are clearly on the low side of this chart. And honestly, it's early in the year to be this low on the chart. We should be here around, October, November. So this is not encouraging. Is it surprising? Probably not. No. I mean, look, I'm in 15, 16, 17, something like that, years of doing this. This is the worst market for condos I've seen, and I was transacting in 2008. 2008 was different. There were buyers everywhere because of perceived value, right? You're buying something at 50% off. There aren't buyers right now. Does that mean that this is all doom and gloom and we're in a lot of trouble in this condo market? It doesn't mean good things. I'm not going to lie to you. However, once again, let's go back to the unique proposition that is Fort Lauderdale. We have things that a lot of other places in this country don't have. We have beach sand. We have a downtown that is growing at a ridiculous rate right now. We have townhomes on the barrier island, of which there's only a handful. We have great real estate, and some of it is finite in what exists, right? You can't create more sand. You can create more buildings, and I know that's going to be the counter to it. But once you've eaten up that sand, we have what we have. So properties like those unique properties, they're going to hold value, and you're going to do better on those properties than others. There are some properties that are incredibly challenging right now. Older buildings that have not gone through their assessments yet, are slow to get their engineering reports. I mean, these are things that are pretty much impossible to sell right now. I mean, they're just a lot of illiquidity in that market. So if you pick your spots, I think that the market is healthy in some respects, but I also think there's some fantastic buys out there. If you're a buyer and you do want to buy one of those kind of trophy things I just ticked off, one of those evergreen properties where even if prices go down a little bit, you're buoyed by great real estate. I mean, if the building's in good shape, the association's in good shape, well, both should be. I'm not seeing the downside as much of a lot of the doom and gloomers are, right? Look at that. I became an optimist over the last 6 months. Sold to list price ratio. For those of you that are new to this, sellers want to be up here. They don't want to negotiate. They want to put something on the market and get 99.28% of their asking price with no negotiations involved. Buyers want to be down here. They want to offer below asking price. Here's how I'm using this right now when I meet with people. I show sellers this chart and tell them, listen, if you're going to be inflexible, you're going to be left out in the cold. That's it. This market needs negotiation. I think right now, the truth of it is, it's more important to have a realtor that has strength in negotiation than just about anything else, because some of these lines are hard to hold. I guess I'm biased because if you've done a deal with me, I like to argue. So I'm gonna fight for you and fight for price. But anyways, look, the other thing that it doesn't say is if you're a buyer and you want to fire off offers 20% off listing price, statistically, you might land one. It's probably not going to be the greatest property, but that's not really the play here either. So buyers and sellers got to use this. I do think if I'm a buyer and I'm looking at this, things are starting to get really appetizing to me. I'm starting to really feel like if I'm a buyer, I really have some wiggle room in negotiation, and I can really walk away with the property that I want at a price that's better than I was expecting, honestly. All right, median days on market, 73 days. What this is how many days a property was actively listed, the time it went from active to pending sale. It does not include the time it takes to close. So you'd add on another 30 or 45 days onto this contract. Sellers, that I think you need to look at it that way. If you're trying to budget and figure out, so if I put my property on the market, when am I going to get money in my bank account? I mean, at this point, you're pretty much allowing 4 months for that to happen, 3-4 months. So it just kind of, realistically, I hope that helps you budget a little time. So who's a higher number of days on market good for? Who's it bad for? Of course, sellers want to be down here. Pressure in the market, that's really what days on market is. Shows you market pressure. If it's down here, shows you a buyer sees a property on Monday, they better make a decision by that next Monday. 73 days, let's see, we're in July. So it's very likely that if somebody toured properties with me in May, that property is still actively listed. Do you think that I can add pressure to a buyer who puts an offer forward in this situation? Not really. I don't have a whole lot of leverage to argue for you. It's incredibly challenging to negotiate condos and townhomes right now. So is this total doom and gloom, and is the sky falling? No. Matter of perspective. Look left. Look, pre-pandemic, we were up here. Right? The pandemic just messed everybody's expectations up. But for a long time, this was normal real estate. This was just selling a condo or a townhome in Lauderdale. I think it just feels so different now for a lot of agents, especially new agents, and for sellers that were watching the market down here. I think it feels different, even though it's not that different. Look, I don't think this number's it's going to level off or keep climbing. I don't think we're just going to see a pull down on it. We're going to get into something interesting that's happening in a minute. It may pull it down, but I don't see it right now, anyways. So always important to keep your eyes on median days. I think it is one of those super important statistics. Let's get into one of those useless statistics. Median price per square foot of condo and townhomes sold in Fort Lauderdale, $375. Look, we've been this way for 2.5-3 years now. There is no story in this. There is no sky is falling, the market's going down. It's just not happening. What is happening, and I've said this for a long time now, the good stuff is selling. Good stuff costs more money. That's it. That's all that, in my opinion, that's happening. Right now, buyers don't want the junky stuff. They're not going tertiary. They're not going to, oh, this unit needs a lot of work, let me do it. They're going into premier areas for units that are already done. That's it. That's the buyer profile. Simple as can be. So that explains why we're still high on this chart in terms of price. That being said, we only had 112 sales, and I take little to nothing in this statistic. Total dollar volume of condo and townhome sales in Fort Lauderdale. Our last meaningless statistic for today before we get into the most important one. I'm going to illustrate to you exactly why I call this meaningless. Oh, let me take off my glasses here. For those of you that have watched me for a long time, you got to watch me pre-glasses, right? All right. So listen, 112 sales came out to, let's call it $81 million in volume. 80,575,000. Okay. 12 sales, call it the top 11% of sales. So 11% of the total sales accounted for just shy of $23 million in this volume. So 11% of the sales accounted for 28% of the volume. Now do you see why I tell you not to look at this stuff? Because the reality of it is, if the high end either shows up or does not show up for a month, the statistic runs wild. If we get into season here, into the winter months, and we have 10 more sales on the higher end, it doesn't really rock the total number of properties that were sold, but it completely skews the total dollar volume, and people are going to misinterpret it and think we're out of the woods. So that's why I tell you, look, there's a reason that I say ignore some of this stuff. There's logic behind it, you know. Might be my logic, not always the best, but that's why I say ignore it. I try to back this stuff up with statistics to get you guys to understand how my mind works with my often broken crystal ball. Month's supply of inventory, condos and townhomes in Fort Lauderdale. Oh, to know me is to love me, and to know me is to know this is my favorite of all charts. Months of supply. Look, if you show me this chart in any market, I'm able to give you a better crystal ball than any other statistic that's out there. Quick refresher for those of you that are new to it. 6 months of inventory is considered to be market neutral, favoring neither buyers nor sellers. The only thing that changes months of supply is an increase in the total number of sales, a decrease in the total number of sales, an increase in total for sale inventory, or a decrease. So there's only 4 levers that you pull here. But what it's going to tell you about is the pace of the sales and who's in control of the market. Look we're up 13% over the last year. Okay. Not as bad as some increases that we've seen over the last year, I'll tell you that. Almost 1 full year of condo supply. Firmly a buyer's market. Firmly. Anybody who tells you that this is a seller's market for condos and townhomes in Fort Lauderdale, they're out of their minds. Straight out of their minds. Is this as bad as a lot of the media is making it out to be? No, it's not. Like I keep saying, it's incredibly challenging. Some properties are selling and working better than others. It's a hard market, but it's not impossible. But look at what's happening. I want to point this out. Look at what's going on. Wow. For 2 months, we've been coming down on supply. Wild, right? Now, what happens if we pull down for another 3 or 4 months? We start to get into a place where Buyers, you don't have the same amount of room that you have to negotiate right now. You can steal some properties now. If you can find a good seller, you can really get some deals. The lower that this line gets, the less likely that is. And let me tell you why I think this line's getting lower. I think this line is getting lower because people put their condo or townhome on the market. It didn't sell. They said, I'm not going to sell right now. They pulled it off the market and they're not pressured to put it back on. Right? This goes into the, do you need to sell or do you want to sell? A lot of people own for cash at low interest rates. If that's the boat that you're in, you don't have to sell. You just want to sell. And I think those that wanted to sell, that didn't get their price, are pulling their properties, putting them on the sidelines, and that's what's bringing supply down. Right? That's it. That, and I'm talking to people and I'm telling them, like I said, do you need to sell? And I think there's a lot of that going on in people's own analysis. I think the people that are on top of the market have recognized they're not getting aspirational pricing. They can't just throw it out there and it'll sell. And so they're deciding not to sell. That's what I got, guys. That's it. Thank you for bearing with me. I will try to get maybe another update in the fall before maybe going into the fourth quarter or something. I've been super busy, so it's been kind of eating up my time to do these videos. But listen, call, text, or email me if you're interested in buying or selling real estate in Fort Lauderdale. I want to talk to you. Thanks again, everybody. I'll see you soon.